All right, Diamond Dogs mount up,
Woo!
Joe. Welcome to another great episode of the Fourth Shift, Mind, Body,
And badge.
So we've got your two hosts, Luke and
Joe?
we got another
Are we
special
not
guest.
going by Dr. Luke and Sergeant Valentin anymore? Are we breaking away from that?
I don't feel like that's how the people know us.
Okay. Well, they don't know
They
you
don't-
now. I think they're confused with whatever you
Yeah,
have
well,
on right now.
yeah, Coach Lasso would be fine.
Yeah.
Huge fans of the show. I mean, we talked
Big
about
fans,
it
yeah.
throughout several last episodes.
In this podcast, we do a lot of pop culture references, right?
We do, and hopefully most people get them.
Yeah.
As you get older and
My
you refer to
beard's
things that you
stuck.
feel like weren't that far away, and then people don't get it because they're too young, it really hurts.
Yeah.
So part of the reason we're in the Ted Lasso kind of mood this afternoon rather, is Ted talks about mental health, panic attacks, depression, and suicide.
Yeah.
So it's kind of a softer way to approach the topic a little bit. It's a very feel-good show, and so Joe and I end up conversing about it a lot, but it's kind of a way to make it a little bit more lighthearted because it's a very, very serious topic, and no doubt has touched a lot of people, or almost touched a lot of people, maybe, hopefully. And it's hard to find people to really talk about that because these experiences are so emotional and there's a lot connected to it. But through some friends, we found an excellent source who's kind of been through this, a very brave soul, another correctional employee that reached out and is willing to talk to us today. So without any further ado, you want to introduce him?
No, I'll let him go ahead and introduce himself. Whether the camera
Tronzo?
just pan out to you, sir.
Hello, I'm Tronzo Graham. I work for Vienna Correctional Center. I'm the transportation officer here at Vienna. I've been employed with Department of Correction for 8.5 years now. Previous, I was a firefighter for 12 years. So I'm married. Me and my wife have 5 beautiful kids together. We don't have kids together, but I have 2, and then I have my 3 bonus kids, I like to call them. Great bonus, but we have a big family and full of love, and that's just a little bit about myself.
Well, great. Yeah, you've had some awesome experiences kind of inside and outside of corrections, and I know there's been one that that you've kind of agreed to share with us today. If you don't kind of mind taking us through whatever we need to know as listeners to kind of understand any context and kind of taking us through that story.
Yeah.
Okay, well, I would like to first start by I first publicly talked about this last year in an open setting. And the reason I did it is I am a hostage negotiator for the Department of Corrections and statewide on the statewide hostage management team. And a lot of times we go through so many trainings in life, training after training after training, and a lot of times we think that it really doesn't work, or we ask ourselves over and over again, does this training actually work? And I found out in a real life situation, in a personal situation, that this training does work. So I did a presentation called The Verbal Judo to Suicide. In this, I will talk about how the training does work. I will talk about what I felt my failures were, and I will talk about my ultimate success in the situation, and also talk about dealing with the aftermath, something that is hard for many of us to do. So it was 5 years ago, on January the 14th, 2018. I had just got off work, made it home. I was doing hospital duty that day, and when I seen my phone, I had like 2 or 3 missed calls from my baby sister. And my baby sister, she knows the job I work, so if she calls me, she knows usually I'm at work. She won't call. She will only call back to back if there's an emergency. So I immediately called her back, and she was in a outrage and just screaming, "They're going to kill him. They're going to kill him." I'm like, wait, what are you talking about? Slow down. Talk to me. What are you talking about? And she said, "Travis, they're going to kill Travis." Travis was my baby brother. I'm 6 years older than he is. And immediately I'm thinking, who is going to kill him? I'm thinking he's having an issue with somebody. Um, then she goes on to tell me the police. They have his house surrounded. He's talking about going out shooting at the police because he's not wanting to go back to prison. Um, Take you back a little bit on this. When I became a correctional officer, my baby brother was so upset with me because he didn't feel like I should be in law enforcement because he was in and out of prison. He did not speak to me from the day I went to the academy to the day of his suicide. It's not because I did not reach out. He just refused to, and I left it at that. So this particular day, I asked my sister, I said, well, which number did he call you from? She gives me his number, and I call him. Immediately, he answered the phone, and my response is, what the hell is going on? What is going on with you? What's the problem? He's like, well, who is this? My family, my nickname is Matt. He said, who is this? I said, this is Matt. He's like, brother, I love you. I just wanted you to know that I'm sorry. I'm sorry for everything that we went through, but I love you. He said, but I'm not going back. And I said, what are you talking about? He said, I'm not going back. So immediately, uh, I tell people first, you have to know your audience. No matter what you're going through, no matter how much training you have to know the audience that you're dealing with. You have to know the people that you're dealing with. So I knew him on a personal level, so I talked to him on a personal level. And I said, what in the hell are you talking about? What are you talking about? And he said, bro, I can't do this. He said, I'm not going back. And I began to revert back to my training. How do I get him to realize that this is not the right way? And regardless to how irate he was, I took it on a personal level, and I said, hold on, first off, this is not how we get down. This is not how we go through things. I said, secondly, you must realize that you're going to affect somebody else's life if you make the choice that you're talking about making. I said, regardless of how you feel about cops, I said, no good cop wants to kill anybody. I said, it is their job to protect, but no good cops wants to kill anybody. I said, if you make them kill you, I said, you must realize that they have to live with this for the rest of their life. They have a family that they have to go home to. They have kids that they have to look at in the face every day. I said, this will affect their life forever. No matter how you look at it, a good cop, it will affect their life forever because even as in law enforcement and we're trained defense and we're trained deadly force, it is not something that we desire to do. It is not a training that we want to ever use in life. So as I began to talk to him, he began to rationalize. And I can hear him screaming at the police through the door. And he's like, hold on, I'm thinking about coming out. I'm on the phone with my brother. He's talking to me. He's one of you all. He's a hostage negotiator. He's this and he's that. So he's rationally thinking. And so I get him to calm down. And I'm like, dude, you got to do this the right way. You can't go out shooting at the police. I said, because if you go out shooting at them, they're going to have to do their job. I say, and I can't hold that against them. They will have to do their job. I said, but this is not how you want to go out. And so as I talked to him, he's like, okay, I'm thinking about going out. He said, but if I go out, they're going to shoot me anyway. They're going to kill me anyway. I said, no, if you listen to me, they will not kill you. And this is in the middle of winter. There's snow on the ground. This is actually 5 days after his birthday. So his birthday was on January the 9th. And so I tell him, I said, okay, first what you need to do is take your shirt off. He said, take my shirt off. It's cold outside. I said, yeah. I said, it's real cold outside. I said, but I promise you, if you do it my way, they're going to put you in a nice warm police car. I said, you're getting a nice warm police car. I said, but you don't want your shirt on. That way they can see your waistband. I said, and don't have nothing in your hand, not even your cell phone. He said, okay. And he's telling the police everything that I'm telling him. Yeah, my brother is telling me what to do. He said, I'm going to come out. I'm going to take my shirt off. That way y'all don't shoot me. And as he's communicating with me, he's talking back with the police department. And so I tell him, I said, but what I want you to do, I want you to leave your phone on. I said, because I want to hear everything that's going on. I said, but set your phone down and just walk out. While this is going on, he's thinking rationally. I feel that he's thinking rationally. And then all of a sudden, the phone goes dead. So I try to call him back, and he doesn't answer. Try to call him back again, he doesn't answer. So I wind up calling my baby sister, and I said, hey, he said he's going out, so I'm getting ready to head over to his house. He lived approximately an hour from me. Also at this time, I had my kids, and I didn't want to take them, so I was going to take them to my mother's house because my mother would keep them when I was working. So I called my mother. I said, hey, I need a favor. I need you to keep the kids. They called me back to work. I don't lie to my mother much, but this is a lie I had to tell because I didn't want her to know what was going on. And so I called her. I said, and she was like, yeah, just bring them on over. I said, okay, no problem. So on my way over, I called my oldest brother, who was also on his way to my brother's house. And he said, well, I'm fit to go over here. I'm fit to beat his behind. I said, well, don't beat him too bad, because when I get there, I'm going to beat him too. And so I go to my mother's. I drop the kids off. My mother lived at the time about 5 minutes from me. And when as I was walking in, she was like, hey, I need you to run to the store for me real quick. I said, I can't. I said, they just called me back to work. I really don't know what's going on, but they told me I got to get there right now. I leave my mother's residence. I get approximately 2 blocks away from my mother's house, and my baby sister called me back crying, saying that my baby brother was dead. He chose not to go out, and he took his own life. At that time, my failure, I felt like as a negotiator, all of the training I had, how could I be a negotiator and not save my own brother's life? So I had to deal with that. Uh, but I also had my success, because in my success, though he took his own life, he did not affect the law enforcement's life by going out doing anyone else any harm or causing them to kill him. Um, One thing that I tell people when you're dealing with this, a lot of people try to forget or block out things that happen, and that's where people go wrong. So they bury their feelings, they bury their emotions in alcohol abuse, and drug abuse, and addiction. And what I tell people is, you cannot get rid of something that is a part of you. Uh, if something is a part of your life for 30 years and it's gone, you can't just forget about it. It's a part of you forever. You have to learn how to cope. Cope in a positive way, not a negative way. So the way I cope is I talk to other people who are going through situations that my brother went through. There's another saying that many times we believe that people who are suicidal, there's always a sign. I stopped by to tell you today that that is not always true. There was no sign, I mean zero signs of suicide. Was Travis on a road of destruction? In many ways, yes. He just wasn't getting his life together. But was there ever any signs of suicide? Absolutely not. Now, if somebody would have called me and told me that Travis had did something to somebody else, I would have believed it. But never would I have thought in a million years, never had I seen a sign or anyone else that I talked to, including his girlfriend and his kid's mother at the time, ever thought that he was suicidal. At times she thought he was homicidal, but not at one time did anybody think that he was suicidal. It affects everybody differently, and we never know who it's affecting. Um, my grandma used to always tell me a smile and a hello saves lives. You never know who lives that you're going to affect by just being nice. And you never know what somebody's going through at that time. So I had to learn to cope with um, not being able to talk my brother out of suicide. But at the same time, I had to know that what I did, the training I had, was a success because it talked him out of doing harm to someone else.
Well, there's a lot there.
Wow.
Certainly, I know you said you kind of first about a year ago told that story in public. So thank you for sharing it with Joe and I today, and whoever might be listening or watching when they check this podcast out. That's a deep story, and no doubt a ton of emotions all over the place, kind of swirling around for you. I bet.
Hmm.
Uh, I'm still processing, honestly.
Yeah, it is.
Uh,
It's a lot.
yeah.
I was on the hostage negotiation, not NEMAT, but did the facility training years ago, and that I still to this day say it's probably the most intense training I've ever had in corrections. I don't know if Joe's had it or not. I mean, it's 2 weeks, and each week you're there at the academy. You come in, there's no coffee and snacks and hanging around class. You go up to those classrooms, and you're just on it the whole time, just
Yes.
going, going, go, negotiating, and you don't have time. Like there's never an optimal time to deal with somebody else's crisis. But certainly working in corrections, potentially having overtime, kids at home, all kinds of stresses. Very seldom are you just at this perfect state of kind of relaxation to where you can handle someone else's crisis. So, but it's nice because it does give you tools to intervene
Yeah.
in those situations. But
Yeah,
it's
yeah. Like I said earlier, I've been a firefighter. I was a firefighter for 12 years. I was a deputy coroner. I was an EMT. Um, And I absolutely say the best training from start to finish that I've ever been through in life with everything that I've done is hostage negotiation training. It's very intense. When I gave this PowerPoint at one of our hostage training, I told them I was so real about what I do because I know what this training means to someone else. I know what this training can do. And what I wanted people to know is if their heart wasn't in it, if they was only doing this training for training points, that if they was only doing this training to get out the institution, that they were doing it for the wrong reason, and if they cannot be as serious about it as what I had to go through with my baby brother, this is not the training for them. Because at the end of the day, um, I ask myself when I help teach training, when we decide who's going to go to the next level and who's not. If my child is ever taken hostage, do I want you in the room? And if my answer is no, then I don't want you in the room for nobody.
Yeah, you got to have people that train hard, go hard in the paint, so to speak, because these situations, no amount of training or scenario can perfectly match whatever situation life will throw at you. But boy, you better get as close as you can by that training and by that practice, and can't really strike home much closer than that standoff with your brother that ultimately he took his life. But to your point about not seeing signs, yes, it is true that some people have sort of long-standing histories with suicide attempts, suicidality, reach out for help. But there's a large body of research that shows us as many as 75%. Well, they studied lethal attempters, so people that did survive but were very, very close. So about 70% of them planned the suicide for an hour or less, and about 30% of them 5 minutes or less. So I mean, that's still a lot of people that obviously get into kind of this momentary crisis to where their kind of coping skills don't match the situation and may think that way. So it's very, very quick for a vast majority of people, and 5 minutes for a third of the people who attempt suicide. 5 minutes.
You know, for a while, me and a really good friend led a support group for kids in our community, and these are one of the topics we talked about as well. A lot of these kids came from different backgrounds when it comes to broken home, just abusive situations, or just needed people to talk to. Um, and one night we talked about suicide, and it was by far one of the most emotional nights that I had when it came to that support group. And, kind of what you said and what Luke said, the signs. We all, every day, just act like everything's fine. And at times, you don't even realize who's hurting and who's not because we all feel like that person has their shit together every
Yeah.
single day. That person's fine. That person's okay. I trust that person. I go talk to that person. And we don't realize that that person could genuinely be struggling themselves. They're just really good. We've talked about it in the past, just that
Yeah.
mask that we have. Uh, this story, your personal story, this is um,
It's pretty deep.
it's a deep conversation that we can have with fellow officers, fellow people behind the lines, and break that stigma of mental health and reaching out and asking for help. Because I mean, you're in your uniform now. You're at work now. I mean, it's one of those things that we don't feel like we can talk about this type of shit with the people we work with because the judgments, because
Some of us just,
I got my glasses off. Do you point? Where'd you point at? Our mind?
I did point.
Who pointed?
I don't know.
I'm sorry.
Maybe put those glasses back
Okay,
on.
glasses are back on. I just don't like the reflection. Um, we where was I going with that? What was I saying?
So who we talk to in corrections,
Yes.
right?
Yeah.
And I think one of the things we've seen, and I'm sure Tronzo, whether it's in cycle, we really love Joyner's interpersonal theory of suicide.
Yeah.
Probably had it in cycle training. The desensitization to violence or suicide, the sense of burdensomeness, and then that kind of isolation or disconnection socially. Those tend to be true. And
What I seem to found, what I seem to find is, and especially in the field that I'm in corrections or law enforcement, even firefighters, we feel like when we talk about these issues, it's a sign of weakness. So what I found, and I actually talked about this at church, is what we find is on the outside we appear to look good, but if we were to open a door, it reminds me of the TV show Hoarders, where on the outside it looks like the normal, everyday family home, in a tucked away in a beautiful community. But on the inside on the other side of the door, we have all of this junk that we have just piled on us and keep piling up and keep piling up, and we have become hoarders of our emotion, hoarders of everyday stressors, hoarders of work, hoarders of
yeah,
things going on in a bad marriage, and this stuff continues to pile up, or we continue to move it around to what's important right now and what's not important right now, like playing the game of Jenga. But eventually, you're going to move the wrong block, and all of this stuff is going to come tumbling down because we're not dealing with the emotional stressors of everyday life. We're not dealing with life on an everyday basis. We're just moving things around instead of dealing with the situations at hand. And that becomes a emotional stress on us, and in many cases, more times than we would like to talk about, it causes somebody to become homicidal, suicidal, or they're just not dealing with their mental stress.
yeah. I've never heard that analogy, so
That's a good
thank you
one.
for sharing. That's a really great one, right? The facade of the house, everything looks nice, but boy, you open up the door and it just doesn't match. And you're right, like finding a way to tackle that stuff before it piles up and kind of implodes or falls on you is kind of a nice way to look at it.
What do you think prevents us in this field from reaching out and asking for help?
A lot of us, many times, we deal with it in a joking way, and dealing with it jokingly, we're putting a band-aid on it. We're putting a band-aid on a gunshot wound. It covers the wound, but we're still bleeding on the inside. It covers the room because we're joking about it with friends, and we don't want to seem weak with them or to them, So we're gonna joke about it. It's okay. For me, I love joking about what I'm going through. That's how I deal with things. That's how I cope with things. That's okay to deal with it that way as long as you are truly addressing the issues. You can't cover it with a band-aid and not have surgery to sew off what is bleeding. To sew up what is bleeding, you still have to fix the wound before you put the bandage on. But many times it's a sign of weakness. We don't want to feel weak. We don't want our friends to think that we're weaker than what we are. But I tell people not dealing with things is what makes you weak.
Yeah. That's one thing. I mean, I agree full heartedly with that because we've talked about in the past. It's acknowledgement is the one of the hardest things we can do because when we acknowledge that our mental health might be an issue or depression or anxiety, we feel weak, we feel broken, and that's one thing I tell people all the time is you're not broken. We are not broken. We talked about this with Jessica.
We're just bent.
We're just bent, right?
But you know what happens to the other body parts when they bend? So,
Yeah.
you ever wonder how, like a bodybuilder, his bones can handle that sheer amount of weight? Well, each time they have those successive lifts with more weight, that stress on the bones, the bending actually makes them stronger in the
Yeah.
long term.
Yeah.
And would we do this with other medical conditions? If we had diabetes or a torn rotator cuff, wouldn't we eventually go get that help? But I wonder if it's sort of like you said, that acknowledgement. If I go get help, then certainly there's a problem.
Yeah.
If I don't get help, maybe one day I'll wake up and this really isn't an issue.
I feel like a lot of the times as well, that pride gets in the way. And I've said this before, is that pride of I'm not weak, I ain't soft, I ain't going to talk about this, and you kind of alluded to it turning into more of a joke, right? And that's how we just put that quick band-aid on it. Uh, but on the inside, like you said, with your analogy, we're bleeding. We're drowning. And when we drown, we think it's okay for us to handle it alone when we can't. We got to reach out. We got to ask for help. We can't face our depression and our anxiety alone because we're going to drown by ourselves every single time. And
We also have to find those people who are sincere. Everyone is
Yeah.
not sincere. Everyone really don't care about your problems. To be
No,
honest,
probably not.
many people they really don't care. They're looking for the next good story. Uh, and that's a problem that we find in the workforce that we don't have enough people, even in administrative positions. We don't have enough people, and I'm not just talking about corrections. I'm talking about every job. We don't have enough people who actually sincerely care. Most cases on many jobs, you're just a number. If you die today, guess what? They're gonna fill your seat tomorrow. Uh, there's not enough people who genuinely care, and we have to find that organization or that group of people who who are truly concerned, who truly care. I found myself on a personal level when I know someone is going through. I take out of my personal time and reach out to those people. Uh, I don't know. You don't even have to talk to me. I don't know what's going on. I really don't need to know. I really don't care what's going on. I just want you to know that I'm praying for you, that I care about you, and if you ever need to want to talk, if you ever want to vent, if you ever want to just cuss and scream and let off some steam, I'm here. Give me a call. We need people who truly care, and that means whatever you bring to me, the worst that you bring to me, I don't take to someone else.
Yeah, yeah.
We got to have people like that that care. We got to have groups like that that care because that's what prevents a lot of people from coming is because what I tell you, I'm going to hear about it tomorrow from five different people.
Good point. Yeah, the inmate Twitter, so to speak. Joe, I haven't finished the book, and I don't want to misquote the statistics, but there's a book by a psychologist, and it's called Platonic, and it really examines those friendships and support networks and how they've changed over the last several decades. And especially for men, they look at the average number of close friends, and I can't remember by what percentage that's gone down, but pretty substantial. And then the likelihood of men saying they're lonely or don't have any friends has gone down. Um, how we make friendships. So in decades past, people wouldn't have said they're just organic or luck, that they take work, you find people, you converse, you let them know you're worth sharing. And then that we're not oriented that way as much as we used to. So especially for the men in our life, we're not reaching out and putting ourselves in that position to have a good net all of the time. So it is important if we are one of those helper friends to make sure we advertise that. And on the rare occasion that somebody does share something personal or important with us, we do the right thing with that information.
It's getting past that vulnerability as well. And I feel like, as a guy who suffered with this type of thing personally with my mental health, it's getting past that vulnerable wall that we put up, that imaginary wall that says, I can't talk to Luke about this. I can't talk to Officer Graham about this. I can't because they might look at me different. And so then that's when we put that mask on, that smile on, and that's when we mask the signs of what we're going through. And it's this story, sir, that you bring up. It's an emotional. I know you said this happened back in 2018, but hearing this story for the first time for me, it's overwhelming.
Couldn't even imagine being in your shoes. Just hearing it from afar years later is so emotionally flooding and powerful.
Yeah.
One of the things that does stand out to me is just how, I guess, kind of, we talked about in a previous podcast, that leadership and kind of your extroversion, right? That, like you said, like even your grandma, you don't know what everybody's carrying on the inside. You give them a smile, you may make their day. Having that kind of mindset, and like you said, you've been in leadership roles, these first responder roles with EMT, firefighter, deputy coroner, and now in corrections. There's maybe something also about your nature that helps you deal with crises. I wonder if you could speak to that a little bit.
Yeah.
What did you lean on during this to kind of help you get through it?
So I'm in the ministry, so I'm a youth minister at our church. I've been in the ministry for some years. I've always trusted God, but what I like to tell people is, growing up in church, many times everything that you went through, people would say, just pray about it, just pray about it. But there is a scripture that says, work without faith without works is dead. So, you can pray about things, but if you're not dealing with the things, no matter how much you pray about it, it does not make a difference. And that's what people fail to realize. But when I was a firefighter, I was in a firefighter in a small town, in a small community. So I had to deal with a lot of crisis with people that I knew on a daily basis. One of the worst calls that I ever had to deal with, I was a medic on a call for a bank robbery. I was the captain on duty. Both ladies that died in that bank robbery I knew personally. And again, you cannot deal with things by forgetting them or trying to forget them or letting them go. You have to learn how to cope with things. You have to cope with it. You cannot get rid of something that is a part of you. That is the biggest thing that I have to remind myself. I cannot forget what happened to my baby brother. That's going to always be a part of me. But what I can do is use what happened to him to help the next person. I was a firefighter, and the first call that I went on where a baby died on me. The baby was just a little over a year old. It wasn't even my call. I was actually going to the chief's house, and he was actually running out the house and was telling me that they had got a call for a baby not breathing at an apartment building. I was the first medic on scene. I get there, I start doing CPR. The baby wound up passing away. Later that day, I called the chief and I told him I quit. I said, I'm done. I'm finished. He sat me down and he said, what about the next kid? I said, what do you mean? He said, you quit today. What about the next kid? The next kid that you could have helped. The next kid that you could save their life. The next kid that you can bring back. What about the next kid? But if you're not there, what about the next kid? So what I have to say, even with what my brother went through, what about the next kid? What about the next person? What about that person who's going through a mental crisis that I could help if I'm not there? If I let everything take a toll on me that happens, what about the next person? Life goes on. It's going to go on with me or it's going to go on without me. I'd rather for it to go on with me.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Wow. What about
that's
the next person?
that is a
Wow.
great way to think about it.
Yeah.
That if we're really going to be helpful, it is about other people and not ourselves. But no doubt, those were still hard processes to go through. So it sounds like your faith, spirituality, involvement in the ministry was a huge coping skill, so to speak. Um, anything else that stands out that kind of helped you get past that, not just with your brother, but some of these other kind of critical incidents you've experienced? What's helped you work through that?
I have a strong family background, so I have family members that I can talk to. I have family members that we talk and we discuss things. I tell them that we have to discuss things openly and free, not be ashamed of what we discuss, not bury things that we discuss. We cannot bury our feelings. So I discuss openly. So when I even put a PowerPoint together about the suicide of my brother. When I put that together, I poured my heart into it. I didn't hold back. I gave everything that I could because I don't want anything to be left uncovered. I want people to realize that this is real. Um, I'm more of the type person who wants to help the next person. So that's what encourages me the most. Because if I'm not there, I can't help. If I bury myself with this, I can't help. And again, I serve a higher power. I serve a God, and I know that without Him, I wouldn't be where I am today. Without Him, I wouldn't be able to discuss what I'm discussing today. But I want to benefit someone else. I want to benefit that other next person who's going through, because again, we don't know who we walk beside every day who might be going through that situation and just need someone to talk to. And by me sharing what I went through, I had people reach out to me all the time.
Yeah, definitely. We appreciate your vulnerability, I guess I would
Yeah.
say, with this incident and others, and just being willing to be so out in the open with it, in the hopes that even if one person now reaches out for help or speaks to whatever, that something changes with one person, that your own moment of uncomfortableness with it is not what's important there. It's helping other
Yeah.
people. So we really appreciate that.
Yeah. I'm glad you joined us today, man. Uh, I feel like if anything, anybody watching this episode and just us sitting here talking to you, uh, this can touch a lot of people. This will reach and hopefully help break down that barrier for other people
Yeah,
around us. When it comes to realizing maybe I should be more honest with my mental health, and maybe I should talk about it. Maybe, or on the other end, maybe I should say hi more often, to reach out and send that text to say, hey, Luke, how you doing today, or
absolutely.
vice versa. If anything, it's that inspiration, it's that spark that just creates that domino effect. So I appreciate your time this morning, and your time with us talking.
I got
Yeah.
a final quote, then we'll kick it to our guests for any kind of final thoughts here. I don't remember if it was Mr. Rogers who said it or not, but I remember a friend who told me this: in a moment of crises, everybody's looking at everything that's gone wrong, who's been hurt, the violence. Look for the helpers, and you'll see that there's still plenty of good in this world. And so you've really restored our faith in how many people we don't know about at each facility in these little pockets. It's an officer, a supply supervisor, a lieutenant, a counselor, whomever. There's a lot of good people at your facility for our listeners who probably are ready to listen and do have the skills to kind of help point you in the right direction. So when you're having a bad day and when you're having a good day, look for the helpers.
Yeah.
I want to thank you all for the opportunity with speaking on with you all today, and I want to leave you all with this final thought. Uh, I have a quote that I created when I was going through my toughest time. Who encourages the encourager? The strongest person have weak moments. So we always got to be open to encourage those who encourage others.
It's beautiful.
Can't say it better than that.
No. Thank you so much for your time, my guy.
Thank you. And on that, this is Joe, Luke, and Tronzo, and we thank you for listening to this episode, or at least this part of the episode of the Fourth Shift, Mind, Body, and
Badge.
Thanks.
Thank you, sir.